Hi everybody, my name is Oля Sergeyeva and I'm creating this video to share a little tool that you can use to create board games for your classroom really quickly and easily. I've been using this tool for about a month now, and recently I've been finding that I'm showing it to my colleagues, and whenever I show it to them, they tell me that they absolutely love it. So I thought I would create a video and share it with other people. So to be quite honest, this is the very first video I've ever created, but I hope it works. So, and in this video I'm going to talk about some materials. You will find all the links in a blog post that I wrote, and I'm going to share the link under this video on YouTube, so you'll find it there. So what am I going to talk about? This is basically a set of board game templates that can be used with a set of question-answer cards. So what I mean is you don't need to adapt the board itself. You can just print out the board and then create some cards with questions, with answers at the back, and the students can play using the board and the stack of questions. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about those board games later, but together with those boards comes an Excel template that allows you to type in a few questions, type in the answers to those questions, and it copies your questions onto a grid that you can print out and cut up, and the answers get copied to the opposite, to the back side, so that when you cut them up, each question has the corresponding answer at the back. And after you have typed up your questions, all you need to do is go to the question grid tab, print it out, insert the paper back into the printer, go to the answer grid tab, print it out, cut it up. So, and you have your set of cards. So I adapted this template from a template created and shared by Technologic, who's an amazing blogger who posts fantastic templates for Excel and for PowerPoint. So if you haven't seen his blog yet, I really recommend that you check it out, and you'll find the link in the blog post that I'm going to link to. So this was the first template, and the second one is very similar, but the difference is that you can have as many questions as you like, even up to thousands maybe, and this template chooses 20 random questions from your list and puts them onto a grid again, and puts the answers at the back, and again you can print it out. And when you press F9, it generates another set, and again F9 and another set. So basically this one is great for revision. So basically what I do for every group I'm teaching is I created a copy of this template, and I copy all the material onto the same in this list, and once a month revision time comes and the students know that they need to revise what has been studied up to now, and it takes me less than maybe 4 or 5 minutes to generate questions based on all the materials that we have studied and answers. Okay, so before we go to the boards themselves, I want to share a few ideas how where you can take what questions you can use for your games. So, well, the most obvious, of course, thing to do is to type up a few questions yourself. So, for instance, if you're studying functional language for expressing opinions, agreeing and disagreeing, you can revise some of the functional expressions before actually giving the students a communicative task. So here are some questions that I can write. So for instance, I know that my students very often make a mistake in this expression. They overuse I agree. So let's ask them to remember some nice naturally sounding synonyms. Another thing is they often make this mistake. So, oops. And for instance, they tend to sound a bit harsh. So I can ask them to revise softening expressions, something like right. So, and as I said, so we can go to the question grid tab, and here are our questions, and here are the answers. And just as I said, I just go and print them. So this is the most obvious thing, but this is not the only option. So some of you might know of the site called Quizlet, and Quizlet is a fantastic site where you can find thousands and thousands of flashcards. So for instance, I can go and look for an FC word formation flashcard set. So, and you can see that there are over 1,000 results on Google. So I can go to this set, and you see there are questions like he to understand the problem surprised me, and we get the verb fail, and we need to understand what part of speech we need and transform it into the noun. Right? So nice exercise for upper intermediate level. So you can go to more here, and you can go to export, and you can select everything and copy. And now I go back into my grid and I insert. And here we go. We have our cards that we can print out and bring to class. So, and as I said, the third idea is to really, over time, to build up all the material that you have been using. Maybe you created a few 20-question games. Don't throw anything away and build things up in the same file and use it for revision. And maybe share this file with students. Okay, so this was these were some ideas for actually finding the material for the games, and now a little bit about the games themselves. So basically, as I said, I found quite a few very nice templates, and so for example, tic-tac-toe, battleships, and so on. And the general principle is before taking the turn, the player has to take a card from the stack, answer the question. They can check the question because the answer is at the back. And if they answered it correctly, they can take their turn. So for instance, in this game, they can put their knot or their cross onto the grid. If they answer it incorrectly, the card goes back into the stack so that the students can revise the same question later on during the game. Sorry. And the player misses the turn. So a few games that I found were, for example, as I said, tic-tac-toe. This is a very well-known game. Players place crosses and noughts, and the player who places three symbols in a row wins the game. So it can be horizontally, vertically, or diagonally, two diagonals. Another game that I really liked is called Dots and Boxes. So in this game, players need to connect dots on a grid, and the player who finishes a square wins the square, and they can place their initial in the square. And again, the same principle applies. Before drawing the line, they have to answer a question. Another example is a very well-known game called Battleships. So in this game, players place some battleships onto a 10 by 10 grid, and after that they're trying to guess where their opponent placed their battleships and sink them. So, and they do this by shooting into individual squares, so for example D4, and exactly the same principle applies. They can only shoot after they correctly answer the question. So these three games were good when you have 2 or 4 or 6 or 20 students. In short, when the students can play in pairs. So, and what if you have 3 or 5 or 19 students? So in this case, I really like this game. So in this game, each player tries to connect their side of the hexagon with the opposite side. So for example, player A is trying to get from here to here by forming a path, a connected path, and player B is trying to get in the same way from the top to the bottom by forming a path again. And if you have three players, the third one plays with the remaining two sides. And again, exactly the same principle. Before coloring the hexagon, they've got to answer a question correctly. So a few more games that I've found, for instance, another ALT favorite, I think, called Shoots and Ladders. And Here, a player rolls a dice and they land on a square, and they have to answer a question correctly, or they go back to the square from which they started the turn. If they landed at the bottom of a ladder, they climb the ladder. And if they landed at the top of a chute, they don't take a question, they just simply slide down. And another version is called Snakes and Ladders, and I really like this template, and it looks really great when it's printed. And another game that I personally have never seen before, I think it's big in Spain. So it's called the Goose Game, and in this game, the basic rule is when you land on a goose, you continue moving by the same distance. So for instance, if I started from number 2 and took 1, 2, 3 steps, and I landed on a goose, so I take 1, 2, 3 more steps to square 8. Or if I started with number 1 and took 1, 2, 3, 4 steps, a goose, so another 1, 2, 3, 4 steps, another goose, so I take 1, 2, 3, 4 and land on 13. And then I pick a card, answer a question, and if I made a mistake, then I go back to from where I started the turn. And there is one more rule here, is there is this sinister field, and if you ever land there, you have to go back to square one. So that's basically it. So I hope you find it useful, and if you find links to some other great templates, or if you create nice sets of cards, please do share them in the comments. Bye bye.